Hello guys and welcome to the next part of the series of What If Issei also had a persona. If you like the video, please give it a like, share it and subscribe to my channel. Now let's start the video. Chapter 8. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. There was a nice breeze among the sunlight through the very space that was the city which the Phantom Thieves lived in at the moment. Anne's part-time job shift as a model was finished rather quickly, as apparently since they didn't like the weather that was meant for the theme of the upcoming magazine. With an apology to the teenager, the crew left her with nothing in particular to do, so she just ended up walking around the city in her school uniform since she had not gone straight to the apartment where she resided in. Anne was on her own walking around in one of the parks that the city had to offer. She couldn't remember which one it was, but she couldn't care less since they all provided such a nice atmosphere and environment to be enjoyed. Taking in a deep breath, she sighed. So bored, she sighed while rubbing her head. Akira, Ryuji, and Haru are all busy at their own part-time jobs. Yusuke is attending the kendo club. Makoto is studying. Futaba is hanging out with Kaneko. What am I going to do right now? She thought to herself. Should I study? Nah, too boring. Anne-chan. Turning her head when she heard a voice, the ashen blonde girl found herself pleasantly surprised when she saw who had spoke. Haru, she asked, seeing the heiress standing just a couple of meters away from her. She took a single step forward to close the distance. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be at work? I've already finished all of the paperwork at the cafe. I wanted to stay and help some more, but Akira-chan said that I should go back home and finish my homework if there is any left. Haru had a soft look on her face. He's so caring when it comes down to all of our futures. That's our leader for you. Anne agreed, nodding her head to add more weight to her opinion. Speaking of which, I got a text from Futaba-chan. She's been begging for one of us to go into the occult research club room and rescue her from Grimori-san. Apparently she's constantly being asked to join the peerage over and over again every day. Really? Haru questioned, tilting her head with a curious expression. That's odd. When Akira-chan told Grimori-san no, she stopped. Maybe Futaba-chan isn't drawing the line hard enough. Either way, it sort of makes me scared of what will happen when I awaken my persona again. Anne commented, slightly shivering. It was an act, but it helped her make a point. Don't worry. Haru comforted Anne, placing a hand onto her shoulder. I'm sure that when the time comes that you'll be strong. She then looked over to her side and noticed something. Oh, how about we get some ice cream? My treat. Ice cream. The blonde of the two hummed in appreciation at the though of the sweet treat. Sure thing, if you don't mind, that is. It's no problem. Haru giggled as the two of them began to walk to where they saw an ice cream vendor just standing around waiting to serve his next customer. The two of them were close when heard the sound of someone crying. Stopping, the two of them looked over their shoulders to see a child sitting on the ground and holding his knee in pain. The kid probably fell down, and it appeared that a nun was consoling him. Issei was even nearby, seeming to try and help calm the kid down with the nun. A nun was a pretty strange sight around this place. There wasn't really a church around if the two of them remembered correctly. The two of them then saw an eerie green light. What the? Anne breathed loudly as she saw that it was the nun who was presenting that radiating light. That looked like something Makoto, Morgana, Akira or me would do when healing you. Guys. In a matter of seconds the child had stopped crying and was back on his feet. Anne and Haru both watched as the nun smiled to the male. They even saw that Issei was even in shock. But it slightly began to turn south when the mother of the boy found her son. From the distance the two of them were standing. The two Phantom Thieves heard the nun smile and explain how they had helped the boy. But then the words of the older lady fell upon all of their ears. You shouldn't talk to someone strange like that. Who knows what she actually is? Anne's jaw partially dropped while Haru covered her mouth while gasping. They knew that some adults could be cruel, but that was just downright blunt with such an insult. Seeing the son and mother walk away, it seemed that Issei was attempting to comfort the nun now. Anne was the first to initiate, walking towards the duo. Haru quickly followed behind, already having a feeling what the blonde was going to do. Hello there, Anne said, a bit of cheer in her tone to make her seem friendly. That, was quite a trick there. The nun flinched a bit and turned to face Anne and Haru as the former arched an eyebrow when she got a good look at the sister. The nun herself looked to be about 15 or 16, so about the same age as Futaba. She had long, shiny blonde hair that licked just below her rear end, green eyes, and a petite but still well-developed figure. She could honestly say that the girl was very beautiful and quite meek-looking as well. Her attire consisted of a dark teal nun outfit with white accents, a white veil, a satchel on her right hip, and brown boots. There probably wasn't any other possible way to stick out even more than she already was. The bright, blonde hair alone did the trick. Anne should know. She lived it. Oh, hello. The nun said with an awkward bow. Aye, it's very nice to meet you. Huh, Takamaki-senpai, Okumura-senpai, Issei asked, standing off at the side with a surprised look with a startled blink. What are you two doing around here? Haru bowed a little. Sorry, we didn't mean to startle the both of you. And no, you guys didn't do anything like that at all. Issei stammered a little bit, his hands raised and waving them around a bit. It's okay. The nun gave a small smile before her eyes widened and she looked like she remembered something very important. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce myself to all of you. My name is Asuya Argento. Issei gave a friendly smile. I haven't really introduced myself to you either. My name is Issei Hyodo. But my friends call me, just Issei. He finished awkwardly, attempting to sound cool at first but botched it at the end of it all. My name is Haru Okumura. Her introduced herself. It's nice to meet you. I'm Anne Takamaki, Anne stated, letting the nun know her legal identity. It's just that I've been wondering about that thing you did just now with that green light. She scratched the back of her head. That was a pretty neat trick. Asia smiled kindly. It is a gift bestowed to me by God. Anne didn't buy it one bit. The way Asia's smile suddenly turned somber and depressed further supported her doubts. There was definitely more to it than that. However, it wasn't really her place to pry for information if the girl didn't want to give it away. It would just be rude of her to ask Asia something like that off the bat, and that was reinforced even more by the fact that she and Haru had just met her. But still, Anne was almost certain that what she and Haru just saw was a sacred gear in action. Judging by Haru's silence, the girl was also thinking the same thing as Anne. No gift would make you look so sad. Anne commented sincerely. Anne-chan is right, Haru added. A real gift would put a smile on your face, don't you think? She finished off with a friendly smile. Takamaki-senpai and Okumura-senpai do have a point. Issei threw in his own opinion. Seeing how three girls were staring at him, he immediately blushed a bit in a sheepish moment while unsure where to look. Well, I mean they are called gifts for a reason, he mumbled in embarrassment. Asia blinked in surprise before smiling kindly again. The three of you are really good people. Depends on who you ask. Issei responded, still unsure where to look. He soon resorted to looking up to the sky. The bright, blonde girl began to giggle a bit at the boy's reply. But it was quickly interrupted when a sudden, loud grumble resonated from somewhere. Anne, Haru, and Issei looked around for any construction equipment but didn't find any. A few seconds later there was another rumble, but this one was much louder than the last. Anne arched an eyebrow as the blonde girl in front of her blushed and looked away bashfully. Sorry, I guess I'm still a little hungry, Asia said with a nervous laugh. A little, Issei cringed. That was even louder than, well, something that was loud. I see. Haru's face was a bit concerned. Well, I know a place where you can get something to eat. She offered while looking at Issei and Anne. You all are welcome to come along if you would like. Oh, I don't want to impose on you, the blonde nun responded apologetically. Me, Issei pointed to himself. Would you really be okay with that? Haru smiled and gently took both of their hands. Don't worry about it, she told them as she began to drag them along as Anne began to follow along in tow. Take a break. Asia looked curiously at the food that had just been brought to her by Akira, who gave them all a raised eyebrow but didn't ask any questions. She had no idea what it was since she let Haru order it for her. It seemed to be just a normal curry with a combination of meat, carrots, and pita bread. She glanced up to Haru to see her blinked at her in concern. She then smiled and gave her a nod of encouragement. Giving a nod back, Asia lifted the combination of food using the bread, bit down, chewed, and then swallowed. Haru-san, this is amazing. Asia proclaimed with an excited look on her face, stars metaphorically forming in her eyes. The addressed teenager giggled happily. I knew that you'd like it, she stated with a smile. It's similar to normal specials here in Adnako no Mize. But I put in an order of pita bread to see how it would sell compared to it normally being with rice. But I think most of the flavor comes from Akira-chan's cooking technique. Oh right, you're one of the supervisors for this place. Anne said, such information coming out of the blue. Yup, Haru nodded her head in confirmation. Since I want to try and open up a cafe eventually, I thought that working here would be a good start. Especially since they brought me up to a partially high position already to handle the paperwork. Anne soon looked over and couldn't help but deadpan as she watched both Asia and Issei both ignore the small talk the two phantom thieves had as they both inhaled their dishes with impressive speed. Although, I still can't believe you ordered the voodoo vindaloo again, Hyodo-san. Looking up, the brunette had his lips closed but jaw dropping as if about to speak. Quickly holding a hand up to show that he was just quickly going to swallow, he commanded the food to go down his throat as he chugged his glass of water. I mean, it does make my stomach feel weird, but it tastes so good. He finally breathed as he partially slammed his glass down. By the way, I really should thank you for the meal, Okumura-senpai. Issei-san is right, we both should be very thankful, Asia added. Haru waved the two of them off gently. Oh, think nothing of it. I'm just happy to see Asia-san and Hyodo-san enjoying the food here. Actually, I've been wanting to ask you something, Asia-san. Anne asked, getting the fellow blonde's attention. If that's all right with you. I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. Oh no, go ahead. Asia smiled brightly. The ash blonde nodded. Are you from Europe or something? She asked her curiously. I've never seen you around town and you don't really see many people with blonde hair and green eyes. The girl nodded in understanding. You were right, I am from overseas. I'm here because I got transferred to this town's church. Anne slightly glanced over to Haru before looking over to where Akira was working. Despite the distance they were at, the leader of the Phantom Thieves had pretty good hearing as he eyed Anne and raised an eyebrow. It was odd why it was this town specifically after all. This place was populated by a few devils as well as who knows how many fallen angels. Considering the amount of activity started growing, such a transfer was a bit sketchy. That makes a bit of sense. But why were you transferred here? There it was, that look again. Asia had the same look when she said that whatever she did to that child was a gift from God. It really didn't suit her. Anne preferred the sweet smile she usually had. It was much lovelier than the melancholic look that she had right now. Issei seemed to see this and his expression formed into concern. Hey, Asia-san, is everything okay? Huh? The nun looked up to see everyone staring at her. Why yes, I'm fine. I'm okay. Are you sure? The brunette asked, leaning back into his seat. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But it's not good to have negative feelings bottled up in you. A second passed as Issei's words processed through Asia's mind as it caused the blonde to smile gently. Yeah, I don't want to say anything right now. But thank you for being so kind, Issei-san. Seeing the brunette stammer once again, Haru giggled in amusement as Anne grinned before she felt a vibration in her pocket. Pulling out her phone, she saw that there was an incoming call. Hello, she asked, a small period of silence following. Are you kidding me? Right now? Taking the phone off of her ear, she looked at the time and groaned before placing it back onto the listening flesh. I can be there in about half an hour, give or take a couple of minutes. Hanging up, she got up off of her seat. Sorry, but I have to go now. Work just suddenly told me they relocated and want me there immediately. Taking out a pen and a napkin, she began to write something on it. Here, this is my number. If you ever need something, don't hesitate to call me. Same for me as well. Haru grabbed the pen when Anne was finished. Me too. Issei added his own contact information onto the material as Haru handed him the pen. Asia blinked while nodding hesitantly. While I appreciate the kind gesture, I don't have a phone with me so I'm not sure if it is okay for you all to give me your numbers. Oh, it's no problem. You should take it anyways just in case you do get a phone by some chance you can contact any one of us. Anne smiled as she handed over the napkin with their numbers to the nun. Thank you very much. It is very kind of you all to do all of this to somebody you just met. Thank you for the meal as well, may God bless your kind soul. Asia replied gently as she clapped her hands together in gratitude while muttering a quick prayer. Issei's head suddenly slammed down onto the table as he groaned in pain. Hyodo-san, are you all right? Haru exclaimed, rushing over to Issei's side. I feel like sunshine, right now, the brunette responded in cheery, sarcastic tone. Anne didn't know how to respond to such a reaction and chose not to. Do you maybe need help finding your way to the church you're looking for? It's okay. Issei-san already offered to escort me there. But thank you for the offer nonetheless. All right then, Anne said slowly as she got up out of her chair and began to run out of the door while watching Haru help Issei off of the table with Asia's aid. Take a break. The dark blanket of night covered the city as late evening took over. As such, much of the town had calmed down and things were starting to slow down. Although, as with nearly any other town or city, there was something that just picked up as night fell. Grumbling, a pissed-off Anne walked down the street on her way home after a long photo shoot, dinner, and another photo shoot right after. How in the world was it her fault that the lighting wasn't correct whenever the picture was taken? Stupid adults finding ways to pin their mistakes on other people. She just wanted to go home and get some sleep. How could this night get any worse? At that moment, the sound of gunshots ran through the air and at the same time a young man's cries of pain were also heard. There it was as well, the bad thing she had practically been asking for. Anne was pretty tired yet energetic, so her mind was not in the right place while her body was quick to react though as she took off sprinting towards the source of the gunshots. The problem was such loud sounds were dangerously close to her location. She ran as fast as she could in hopes of preventing whatever travesty that was sure to happen. Take a break. Issei Hyodo was in pain, and a lot of it. He had a hole in his leg and a large cut on his back. They both burned, almost as much as when the fallen angel stabbed him with that spear of hers, but not quite. Why did he have a hole in his leg and a large cut on his back again? Maybe blood loss was making his head pretty light, but he was forgetting at the moment. Ah, now he remembered. When he arrived at the house where he was supposed to fulfill his contract, he found out that the client was dead and that some white-haired dick that called himself an exorcist was the one behind the killing. In a nutshell, the situation was completely shitty in every meaning of the word. The fact that the exorcist was an asshole certainly did not help things. Oh dear, oh dead, having second thoughts. The exorcist taunted before posing himself to strike. That way of thinking is what I hate the most. Issei closed his eyes and prepared for the worst to come. But it didn't happen. Instead, he saw a shoe. His shoe nailed the cunt's head and was a hard it as the exorcist actually stumbled a bit. Whipping his head around at the source, his jaw dropped in horror. Takamaki-senpai, Issei exclaimed. What the hell is going on here, Hyodo-san? Ugh, what is that smell? Anne groaned, pinching her nose when the scent of copper invaded her nostrils. Her eyes soon laid upon a corpse in the room, pinned against a wall while gutted like a fish. Blood painted the surface the body was stuck against as it only spread to the floor. She gagged. Oh God, Takamaki-senpai, you have to get out of Higa. Issei ran towards Anne to try and get her out of the house but then cried out in pain as he fell to the ground when the same leg was shot again. Snapping her head up, Anne could clearly see the guy she had nailed with the shoe she found at the front of the house. He was short, but probably taller than Futaba. He looked young, maybe in his mid to late 20s. He had chin-length white hair and red eyes. His clothes were considered clerical, unsurprisingly, and he had a silver cross hanging across his neck. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Anne asked, noting the weird sword that the weirdo had as well as gun. Bending her knees, she helped Issei back onto his feet. Fried Selzen, shitty devil killer and boy priest at your service. The man identified himself in a disturbingly crazed manner. You've got some nerve for getting in my way, you shitty devil. I'm not a devil, Anne pointed out, getting a surprised look from Issei. Wait, you know about devils? The brunette asked, but he was unable to get his answer as Fried spread out his arms in a wide manner. It doesn't matter, He almost cheered, his tongue hanging out of his mouth. Shitty devils. Shitty devil lovers. They're all the same. They deserve to burn in hell. And what the heck are you supposed to be, a priest? You sure have a disgusting mouth. Anne commented offensively. She then realized that she had just made a mistake since she had just went into this battle without a plan. Oh, I am going to enjoy raping you. Fried lunged forward with his sword with rage. You stay away from her. Issei shouted as he attempted to punch Fried. The exorcist ducked under it and smirked as he jumped and smashed his knee into Issei's face. The devil groaned in pain but managed to grab Fried by the collar and headbutt the man's face and caused Fried to recoil back a few steps. That's my face, you dick of a devil. Fried roared. Takamaki-senpai, just go. I'll be fine. Issei exclaimed loudly, wincing at how he was in extreme amounts of pain with 2 holes in one of his legs and a cut on his back. It didn't help that they were applied because of the powers of holy light apparently. Grinding his teeth to bear the pressure, Issei lunged forward to stall Fried. But Anne didn't run. She knew that it was stupid of her not to, but she had a small excuse that she was tired. Still, that never dulled her senses at the moment as her mind was sharp due to the sudden pump of adrenaline. Her body told her to just get out of the house. Her instincts told her to stand her ground and help Issei. Her fists tightened in frustration when the brunette was knocked down by the white-haired douchebag. Hey, asshole, Anne exclaimed, managing to get Fried's attention as he stood right over Issei. With her body moving, she ran right towards the exorcist and landed a sucker punch to his stomach and toppled Fried over. Quickly draping Issei's arm over her shoulder, she began to drag the boy away as fast as she could. She didn't get far when she heard a gunshot and had pain pierce her leg. Stumbling, she had to use the closest wall for support since Fried had shot her right in the leg. Takamiak-senpai, just leave. It's not worth it to stay around to help me. Issei pushed off the girl and tried to engage Fried once again. Anne couldn't help but be frustrated with herself. Slamming her fist against the wall, she released a growl of frustration. The hand that was balled up tightened so tensely the knuckles began to turn white. Her perfect teeth grinded together, unable to ground out the pain in her leg. It was just so damn annoying that she couldn't do anything in a situation like this. My, it has been a while. Gasping, she felt it pulse within her. Something inside her wanted to get out. The voice had spoken, and wanted to be free once again. Her sudden breath managed to stop the fighting between Issei and Fried as they both craned their heads over towards Anne, who was still standing in place. Tell me, who is going to help your precious little school companion? She began to scream, cry, shout in agony as the voice continued to spread like a disease. Falling to the ground, she began to thrash around. She constantly arched her back off of the ground, immediately to slam it back down over and over again in moments of regaining strength and suddenly losing it. Running away was never the option. Watching Anne wriggle around, Issei took advantage of the situation as he slammed his fist into Fried's stomach to push the asshole away. Dodging the swipe at his legs, he leaned back to barely avoid a shot to his head before being tackled towards a wall by Fried's shoulder. The brunette cried out when he was stabbed with the sword made of light. Such is the scream of the inner and outer you that dwell together. Anne's screams were ignored as Issei continued to try and buy as much time for Anne as he could. Hitting the back of the exorcist's neck, Issei attempted to use his good leg to kick the side of the exorcist. If only he could manifest his sacred gear already. Why the hell wasn't it coming out? I am thou, thou art I. Finally, her screams got loud enough to grab the attention of Fried and Issei once more. Feeling bored with the devil who was knocked to the ground, Fried slowly took his time to walk over to Anne. Oh, you just want me to do you already? Well, don't mind if I do. He sang out. Don't you dare touch her. Issei growled out, holding on tightly to Fried's pant leg. And don't you dare touch me, shitty devil. Fried kicked the brunette's head to force the boy to release his grip. Anne released a final cry before going silent and still. Do you remember the contract? I remember, Carmen. Anne whispered before slamming her fist on the ground and began to get back up. A sudden burst of blue flames erupted from her face. Within that single flash, a red mask set itself up over half of her face that looked like the face of a panther. Behind the mask, her eyes were a piercing yellow color that stood out in the eye holes. That's right, No more holding back. Of course. You've restrained yourself again for far too long. The same blue flames that had erupted from her face now flared out from her left hand. As Fried ran up to cut her, she grabbed his wrist with that single hand and stopped his attack right in its tracks. She could feel the power rise within her. Balling up her right hand, it also let out a pulse of the fire as she nailed Fried right in the balls and sent him soaring to the other side of the room. But do not worry, I'll gladly lend you my strength once more. Grabbing her mask, she tore it off and screamed while being covered by a pillar of blue fire. As the color began to die down, red contrasted against the blue as it brightly presented itself on Anne. Changing from her casual wear, she now had on a skin-tight red latex catsuit. There, however, was a cutout for the cleavage to present itself with a zipper at the front and back. What finished her outfit were simple things: pink gloves, dark red thigh-high boots, and a clipped-on tail at the back. Whoa, Issei breathed, unable to stop himself from staring at Anne's chest. He couldn't really see it before due to the type of clothing the ash-blonde girl would wear. That as well as Issei would be the one running away when she chased him and the rest of the perverted trio. Although he was surprised that she wasn't mean to him when they were with Asia. His eyes however trailed towards the large figure standing behind her. Ho. Ah. Ha. Its skin was pink, but its bust was huge and revealing almost everything. Just live Anne, the cleavage of the figure was showing. Despite its much barer presentation, the outer half of the body part was covered in some kind of black material. It was hard to tell what it actually was since it was around her shoulders and provided a collar before disappearing along the arms and body of a red and black dress with a few designs all over the body. The arm and stomach were nearly blended in with the rest of the body. Black was the main color that took over the two areas. But within such a dark area, the only color to be provided as well were red hearts littering the dark color, while there would be a strip of light pink adjacent of the color vertically. The same could be said for her heeled boots except around the bottom, the actual heel and tip of the footwear being crimson red. The rest of the dress had one layer of cloth overlapping another layer about 5 times. Red was once again the main color, but then bright pink that looked like orange or peach and black highlights helped make the dress look more appealing. Around her waist were several large and small roses with a long thorny vine wrapped around her body. Where such vines led to was a bit of a surprise. The first vine led to some kind of male figure in a suit being used as a footstool for the lady. The male didn't seem to be bothered or love the treatment. He wore a formal suit with a red bow tie and the vines were wrapped around his neck. The most peculiar thing was that his head was a metal box in the shape of a heart, as his eyes were also that shape, but his mouth was round and had bars like a jail cell. The second vine was the same, leading to a male that looked identical to the first. But the secondary object floated in the air, dangling yet looking mesmerized by the thing that had captivated him. The head and face looked rather peculiar. Well, the face was hard to describe since its face was actually covered in a Black Panther mask that covered even the back of her head with material looking similar to the kind that covered her cleavage. A cigar was in her mouth and was lit up, smoke lazily climbing upwards. It had black hair as well, in an odd fashion of having it in the style of twin ponytails while using a drill hairstyle look as well. "You are so fucking disgusting," Anne said slowly, making sure Fried got every single word that came from her mouth as she stood her ground with a completely healed body. "You almost make me ashamed of being human. Ah, you bitch. The only time you're supposed to touch my dick is when you're making me feel good," Fried exclaimed, grabbing his balls as he began to get back up off the ground. Walking, she stood in front of Issei protectively. With a swing of the figure floating, the woman that had been summoned looked towards the brunette. Right before his eyes, he could see his flesh regrow and there were no longer any holes in his body within seconds. Even the pain had disappeared. "How?" he breathed in fascination. "You just go and murder someone who must have had a family, friends, maybe they loved someone or someone loved them. But you took that away without a single trace of remorse." Anne continued on as Issei slowly began to get back up and stare at Anne in awe. "And you also hurt a student for no good reason at all. You're the shitty one around here, you complete dick. Ha, didn't you hear me earlier?" Fried picked at his ear with his pinky, looking to see if he had gotten anything that may have been inside. "That asshole is a shitty devil. A demonic being that is disgusting and should just go die. Just like shitty devil lovers like yourself. And you're just a shitty person in general that needs to be taught a lesson. Anne suddenly raised her hands to produce some kind of weapon. It had a fancy D-guard and shiny handle. The actual guard part protecting the handle looked like it was made from bronze, though, as it had a copper light color and a think gold design along the outer shell. There was even a hilt for the weapon. Instead of a blade, though, there was a tiny column with a single going point. At the tip of the point, though, were 3 gems adjacently placed around on the left, top, and right of the area. On the left was a sapphire in a diamond shape. On the top was a pale emerald with the shape of a diamond. On the right was a ruby with the exact dimensions and shape as the previous 2 gems. Yanking the top, though, the weapon was revealed to be a whip, as an orange energy tether kept the handle and the tip connected. Stretching her weapon to make a point, she looked like someone dangerous in a kinky way depending on the person. It was very interesting that her shiny Naraka whip came from what could be considered a dark persona, Black Frost. I've had enough. Anne grounded her teeth, pulling at her weapon to emphasize her frustration. I'm going to enjoy beating the crap out of you. Stomping one foot down, smoke poured out of the persona's cigar violently. Let's go, Carmen. No mercy, no holding back. That's what Akira had warned them when it came down to fallen angles. The same could be applied to this case. Carmen seemed to take a deep breath quickly as Fried ran forward recklessly. With a fast exhale, though, a giant cloud of smoke erupted from the persona's mouth and stopped the exorcist in his tracks as he coughed violently. The smoke also provided cover for Anne as she rushed forward. Hoping that Fried would be confused, she was slightly disappointed that the cunt wasn't. But she still managed to get the drop on him as she unleashed a fury of lashes. Despite being unable to fight for so long, her flexible body simply danced on the fly and forced Fried to defend himself. Every time he tried to block one attack, 2 cuts appeared, and the attacks that he didn't block and tried to dodge instead would still cut him anyways. His clothes and skin were getting shredded by the vicious assault. The look in Anne's eyes were angry as her wipe splattered Fried's blood over the walls, ceiling and floor. Gah! Fried grunted as Anne kicked him away. The unexpected assault had pushed the 2 over by the corpse and far away from Issei, who stood in place in shock. With Carmen standing right next to Issei, the persona lobbed several balls of fire towards the exorcist while he was distracted by Anne. But the persona missed as it shot past the both of them and landed on the floor. A pillar of flames looked like lava as an intense heat came from a large column of fire where the projectile had landed. Go to hell! Fried screamed as he jumped back and aimed his gun at Anne. He smirked as he attempted to pull the trigger in a last-ditch effort. Fried's eyes widened with horror as his gun was suddenly tangled in the whip and Anne pulled the firearm out of his grasp. Spinning around with momentum, she eventually turned back to face Fried, but now there was a new weapon in her hands. A Tommy gun was what she held. Almost like her whip, it was purely a color of shiny gold. There was no stock to the weapon at all. There was just the main body of the weapon, an iron sights, and the barrel. The handle was as large as one would be on a nice pistol, so it fit perfectly in Anne's hand. The ammunition clip was circular, larger than the size of the handle, and provided the front cover part of the trigger guard. The barrel was supported by the action bar, and there was even a long front sight to accompany the lengthily compensator as well. In simple terms, it was a modified golden Tommy gun. Wild Hunt made from Odin was overcomplicated for a simple weapon. Issei's excitement now turned to a scared look at how violent the blonde was being. Anne pulled the trigger, inflicting a few bullet holes into the exorcist. But none of them seemed to be lethal. Unfortunately, there was a sudden click in the middle of the spray of bullet as Anne let out a growl of frustration. Wait, it jammed. Are you kidding me? Before she could do anything about it, though, there was a sudden scream that stopped her from what she was doing. She turned around and her eyes widened to see Asia standing nearby. She looked terrified and it looked as if she was starting to cry. Anne-san, Issei-san, what is going on here? Why are you? She seemed to trail off when she noticed the dead body in the room, which promptly caused her to scream again. Asia-chan, Asia-chan. Fried wheezed as he quickly moved in front of Asia. Heal me. Look at what the shitty devil-loving bitch did to my body. Heal me quickly so I can kill them both. Anne and Issei both narrowed their eyes at Fried while Asia looked at them with curiosity, fear, and concern. She then looked back at Fried and developed a rather sorrowful and pleading expression on her face, much to the blonde's and brunette's surprise. Please father, stop this. Anne-san and Issei-san are good people. Asia pleased with the crazed priest. They helped me a lot when I first arrived at this city. After hearing her words, Fried quickly wore an angered expression and slapped Asia's cheek so hard that she lost footing from the sudden painful action and fell over. You bitch, you're not better than that shitty devil-loving whore over there, he shouted while pointing to Anne. Bastard. Anne and Issei shouted at the same time before exchanging looks with each other. Anne raised an eyebrow but still gestured over to Fried. Seeing her schoolmate nod, she charged towards Fried with Carmen taking better aim at the one who she was going to beat up so badly. However, before Anne could reach Fried, a blinding red light encased the whole room and what appeared to be a magical symbol materialized in the air. A few seconds later, a blast of red-black energy came screaming out of the symbol towards Fried. The blast hit the crazy exorcist dead on as he was blown away from where he stood. Soon enough, the entire occult research club came out of the circle all of a sudden. Don't worry, Issei-kun, we've come to save. Kiba started off with a loud voice, but he slowly lost it as he noticed Anne. Yuto-san, Anne asked, confused to how the circle suddenly appeared and summoned all of the devils of Rias Peerage. Wait, how did you all get here all of a sudden? I should be the one asking questions, Rias stated, walking up towards Anne with a suspicious look. What are you doing here? But before Anne could answer, a voice interrupted them. Well, isn't this tear-jerking? Everyone turned to the side to see Fried standing at the doorway. He was still heavily injured, but was otherwise not harmed by the energy blast that was just thrown his way. The smoldering hilt of the sword showed that he had managed to block the attack, but it got destroyed at the same time. It appears that there are too many shitty devils here at once. Fried exclaimed, the crazed look from before returning to his face. Sorry, but I can't play here anymore. It stinks in here. Suddenly, the exorcist produced something from his robes and threw it on the ground. A large cloud of smoke appeared, blinding everyone in the room. A few seconds later, a scream and rushing footsteps could be heard. Anne burst out of the smoke and followed the sound of the scream and feet out the door. It should have been so obvious. Tat's smoke cover was only a ploy to make a quick getaway. The blonde sprinted out of the house and looked around for any signs of Frido Rossia. At first, there was nothing. But out of the corner of her eyes she spotted two figures running into a nearby alley. Anne ran after them and quickly reached the alley. But when she got there, they were gone. It was almost like they had vanished like a fart in the wind. Anne began to think where they had gone before a black feather fluttered down from the sky. Wait, a black feather. She crushed the feather tightly in her hand as anger boiled inside of her. Eyeing the sky, she made a vow. She was going to save Asia. The fellow blonde was innocent. The nun literally did nothing wrong. This was something she was going to tell all of the phantom thieves. They will all agree to help her. They will agree to save Asia. They will know the determination that Anne felt. They all will do their best. Together, they were going to search for such a gentle character. They all will find her. She knew they would. When they do find her, there was going to be no power on the earth that could stop them. I am not exactly happy with the chapter. I wanted to add more issei in because I honestly want him to be able to look up to the older female phantom thieves like sisters idols. No romancing at all since he already has a few people in the DXD series. But, I did a job. It wasn't a good job, but it was one. Yeah, this was pretty weird in general. I say the fight was a bit disappointing. But anyways, setting up for the next chapter in a sense. I don't know. There is going to be a game mechanic I haven't seen in AP5 FIC yet, so I hope I'm the first one to use it in the next chapter, if I can make it work. If you can guess who is going to unlock their persona next, you deserve a cookie. If you get it wrong, you deserve a slightly over-baked cookie. Buy yourself cake-flavored pie-flavored cake if you can guess the order I'm going to awaken the personas. No flames please. Chapter 9. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. And that's what happened. As much as Anne would have loved to have just blamed the Occult Research Club for interfering with the whole situation, Anne blamed herself for not being able to react fast enough when she saw Fried throw that smoke bomb. Instead, she just went home immediately without even talking to Rias Peerage, as she simply got back to the Phantom Thieves and reported what she had gone through. So that's why I'm asking you guys to help me find and save Asia-san, Anne exclaimed after, standing up while throwing her arms open to emphasize her need. As everyone stared at her while sitting down, Akira was the first to answer with his elbows on a table and chin resting on his hands. And we will save her, the black-haired male answered. But there is still the need to finding where Asia-san is to begin with. We don't even have any idea where the fallen angels are setting up their own base. Akira's right, Ryuji nodded his own head. We can't do anything unless we can find out where they are so we can bring the fight to them. Although, Makoto said slowly, starting to get an idea, this could also be the perfect opportunity to get some stuff ready. I think we may even have some supplies from our previous palace infiltration that we could use, like medicine and such. Nodding her head, she took a couple steps away from the group before turning around. I'll go and check to see what there is in stock. We don't know how fast we'll find where they are though, Morgana stated, however, slightly frowning as he paced around the table on his 4 legs. We also have no idea what they're going to do to Asia-san if we don't find her in time. So we'll have to not only search for her quickly, but also react just as fast. As Makoto said, we need to have as many tools as we can have ready at our disposal. Haru stood up. Since she and Anne both were the only ones who hung out with Asia, she was one who had a much higher level of determination than everyone else. I'll see if I can help make some food to help you guys keep your strength up when fighting. Akira raised his hand, however, to stop Haru. No, I'm sorry, but I can't have you doing that at this time of night. I think it might be better if you help Makoto search for medicine. There may be some stuff that we could use that's not as effective as the food but possibly still useful. Seeing Haru nod in determination and walk off, Akira turned to Futaba and Anne. You two, go to sleep now. Since you both are the only others that have awakened you personas, it's best that we have you ready for a fight at any moment. But, Anne attempted to protest, but Futaba placed a hand on the ashen blonde's shoulder. Akira's right, Anne, Futaba said quietly. You have Asia-san on your mind, you're worried about her. But you won't be able to save her if you're too tired to fight. Tugging on Anne's clothing, the orange-haired girl kept pulling and refused to move until Anne did. Watching Anne begrudgingly walk away to her room since all of them were in the girl's apartment, Akira sighed while resting his face in the palm of his hand. I really hope I'm making the right decisions here, he said, rubbing his forehead. Plus I think I'm rushing you guys as well. Come on, dude, you're just doing the best you can. Besides, if it were any one of us giving orders there'd be a lot of setbacks. Ryuji pointed out, attempting to boost his friend's confidence. He's right, Yusuke agreed, nodding his head. But think about it, Akira said straightly. This is reality that we are dealing with. Not the metaverse, not a palace, the real world. He paused for a second. An actual human life we are dealing with here with. This isn't changing a heart like we normally do. Both Ryuji and Yusuke were silent, thinking about Akira's words. He was right. This was not as simple as going through a palace, defeating shadows, eventually having to steal the treasure and fight their way out. Now, the shots from their guns did matter. The strikes of their weapons had to be careful. It didn't have to be said, but the weight of thought was a bit obvious. It was going to be difficult to not kill real people in reality. I'm going to go search around on the internet. Maybe they're staying at some famous place or something around the city. I mean, they don't really want to be seen with blood on them if they do happen to hurt someone when entering a hotel. Ryuji volunteered, getting off of his seat and walking out of the door to get back to their own apartment. Hey, Morgana managed to get Akira's attention as the cat hopped off of the table and onto the couch. Think we might still have some of that stuff you crafted in your room back in Tokyo. Maybe even some more materials. Akira thought about it, humming to himself in thought. He nodded his head. Yes, they may still have some combat infiltration tools left. Although, there was actually something that just came to his mind. Looking over to Yusuke, the blue-haired boy looked like he was in an awkward position since he was the only one left with nothing to do. There's something very important I need you to do. Take a break. The sun was bright and the sky was clear, but the streets of the city were noticeably empty as lunchtime approached. How strange considering that it would usually be the time that the streets were packed with people. The weather was nice too, and it had been nice for the last week or so. Why people would choose to stay in on such a wonderful day was baffling, or maybe it was actually a school day and people were working. Among the scarcely populated streets was Anne. The phantom thief weaved her way around the people that she came across as she moved swiftly and intently towards her destination. What was she doing out of school during lunch? During the morning as she arrived to school, she walked into her classroom and saw that there was a note on her desk. Well, she didn't really see it. Akira actually pointed it out when she dropped her bag right on top of it. The contents of the note were pretty suspicious and quite cliché if Anne had to state her opinion verbally. It was a typical, "meet me at this location," message. The sender even cut out letters from magazines and newspapers so that there didn't have to be any writing. Whoever sent it either really was not messing around or had a really strange sense of humor. At the moment of thinking about why she was walking outside of school grounds, the teenager passed the park that the note had singled out for a rendezvous point. Suddenly, Anne felt someone grab her shoulder. It was not aggressive, but it surely got her attention. The blonde turned her head slightly to see Issei standing behind her. It seemed that the perverted boy had recovered from his injuries rather quickly. Maybe it was with devil powers or something. There was something odd about the whole situation though. Rias or anyone else from her peerage weren't spotted nearby, so either they were hiding or not around at all. Still, Anne had to ask with a bit of a surprised look. "Hyodo-san, what are you doing here?" The brunette had a confused look. "What are you talking about?" He scratched his head. "Didn't you get my note?" Anne raised an eyebrow as she dug into her pocket and fished up a crumpled wad of paper. She held it out for Issei to see. "You mean this?" Seeing the boy nod, she raised an eye even higher. "Why would you send me a note? You could have just talked to me, you know." "Why yeah, but, you're kind of, intimidating." Issei admitted while sheepishly scratching the back of his head now. Quote, "Intimidating." Issei nodded energetically. "You're pretty intimidating," he stated with a bit of fear as he eyed her carefully. "If the fact that you would chase me and the others down whenever you would catch us wasn't enough, using that whip and gun is scary enough by itself." He finished with a dreadful cringe, but then it began to lighten. Although, he trailed off to stare at her chest for a second. "Yeah," Anne said awkwardly before noticing where his eyes were. She slapped the back of his head. "Focus." She scowled for a second. "So, any reason why you called me out?" "I want to save Asia-san. But in order to do that, I need your help, Takamaki-senpai," Issei stated earnestly, rubbing the back of his head. Anne stared for a few seconds. She then blinked. "You want to save Asia-san?" She repeated the question just in case she wasn't hearing things. "More than anything else." The perverted boy nodded his head. "Plus, you're the only one I can think about that also knows about devils. So you have to know about fallen angels as well then. You're the only one I can ask since we both know Asia-san." "Why ask me then?" Anne asked, folding her arms and developed a confused expression. "I mean, I definitely would be glad to help you. But what about Grimori-san helping you? If you want to find her then Grimori-san could probably do it better than me." Issei hung his head. "I don't think that's an option." "Why's that?" "Because Baku told me to forget about Asia. That it's too dangerous for me to continue associating with her." Issei's voice was sad and slow. "But, I really want to save her. I can't just leave her with those freaks." He continued. "Even if I die, I can at least make sure that Asia-san is able to escape." Anne didn't reply immediately. Closing her eyes, she was perfectly content with Issei's answer actually. Yes, the boy's actions were perverse. But the rumors were certainly much more exaggerated than ever. She first witnessed that when Issei talked to Asia. Anne also remembered when he protected her. She was no convinced that Issei meant every word, being such an honest person. He was no longer a pervert. He was now a chivalrous pervert. "I like that answer," Anne stated with a smile. "All right, I'll help you." Issei's eyes lit up. "But, we have no idea where to even start looking." "Ever." "Issei-san, Anne-san." Both teenagers looked over to the side and were stunned to see Asia standing next to them. She was safe, and seemingly uninjured. "Well, That was easy. Issei commented. Yeah, so, what do we do now? The perverted boy asked, really confused on what to do. I don't know, Anne said slowly, wondering if there was going to be more to this event. Maybe get some lunch. I guess. Take a break. Akira was at the back of the school for lunch. Not the old school building, but a small clearing hidden behind some trees. It was the perfect spot not to be disturbed even if there was noise. Not a soul would disturb him. He prepared himself, getting into a good position. Sona waited in a bit anticipation for Akira to get start. Setting up a small object that looked like a combination between a grenade and a C4 explosive, Akira backed away a fair distance while Sona stayed a couple of feet behind the black-haired boy. Morgana himself was in his humanoid form as he watched the two of them be at a good amount away from the item. With his slingshot aiming for the thing, Morgana released a shot and hit the item. The explosive blew up. The size and power of the blast was fairly powerful. Akira and Sona both had to cover their ears as the noise was louder than expected. Fortunately, especially for Morgana, it was only bad enough to cause their ears to ring for a couple of seconds before they unplugged the open canals to their brains. Well, it seems that any form of impact will cause them to explode. Morgana stated with an interested look at the damage that had been done to the area that had been a victim to their tests. A good chunk of the ground and a couple of trees were gone and knocked over due to a lack of trunk. Sona stared with a slightly disturbed look as she then looked over to Akira, who was nodding his head in approval to Morgana's comment. You made explosives, she said in a tone that proved she was not too happy with what she had just discovered. In your room. It's called a Megiddo bomb. I made it from tanned leather, red phosphorus, and liquid mercury. Akira nodded his head as Sona seemed to glare at him. Don't worry, I have a limited supply of everything, so I can't make any quantity I want anytime. He stated in a matter-of-fact tone. The fact that you made such threatening items is still a huge concern. Sona deadpanned, folding her arms. Just where did you get tanned leather, red phosphorus, and liquid mercury to begin with? She thought about it for a second. Wait, let me answer my own question. You found all of that in the metaverse, didn't you? Pretty much. Morgana nodded his head, shaking his skull. Sona then shook her head. I don't think I want to ask how such things can be found within such a place. She sighed, massaging her forehead before looking at Akira. So let me guess, you're getting ready to save that nun that Anne-san is close to. Akira looked over to his side. You know about Asia-san. Correct, Sona confirmed, widening her standing posture to make herself a bit more comfortable. Rias explained everything to me last night, feeling a bit anxious that her new pawn is going to try and act on his own. And what is your opinion of the situation? Akira asked, getting a questionable look from Sona. I'm just asking, how would you feel if it was one of your own members in the predicament Hyodo-san and Anne are in? That is a bit of a tough answer, Sona admitted, putting a thoughtful look on her face. I think. There was a quick sound of vibrating, but it was enough to cut Sona off. Reaching into his pocket, Akira pulled out his phone just as Morgana leapt up on his shoulder to get a better look of who was messaging the boy. Sona also peeked over to see the conversation on screen. Guys, this is crazy. But I found Asia-san. Anne texted each and every one of the Phantom Thieves in the group chat. Wait, is she serious? Morgana exclaimed, rather surprised at this sudden outcome. For real, how the hell did that happen? Ryuji answered, seeming to be in as much of a shock as Morgana, judging by the words. Yusuke was next to dive into the conversation. I too am curious as well. That's what I'm planning to ask her. Anne told everyone. We're going out to eat lunch at the moment with Hyodo-san. Hopefully Asia-san will tell me everything we need to know. Can't you just bring her back? Akira asked. I don't think that's a good idea. Makoto commented. Who knows what may come to the school if we do end up doing that. We'll have to keep this issue outside of academy grounds. So does that mean that we'll have to be ready earlier than expected? Haru joined in. We knew that it could have happened at any time, but I didn't think it would be this fast. I'm kind of happy that you found Asia for two reasons. Futaba put in her own thoughts. First of all, we can find out where those fallen angels are and kick their butts. Second, it's the perfect opportunity to escape from Grimori-san. She has no idea of when to just give up. No matter how many times I say no, she keeps pressing on. Rias does have her reasons though, Sona said from the side, reading the conversation. Sorry, we're about to eat now. I'll start questioning Asia-san now. Anne had to end the conversation there. As Akira placed his phone into his pocket, Sona stared. Despite the sudden rush, you're pretty well organized. It's sometimes good to keep a cool head in the situations you are in. Akira answered. If you lose it, you could be in a disarray and lose concentration. Such could be applied to battle. Noted. Sona nodded her head. Hearing footsteps approach them, she turned her head and raised an eyebrow at who was walking towards them. Yusuke-san, what are you doing here? Ah, Sitri-san, I was not aware that you would be joining us. Yusuke nodded his head, fully aware that the student council president had discovered their secret identities but kept it all a secret. I'm just here to drop off a few things for Akira that he asked me to make. In Yusuke's hand was a briefcase. Seeing the blue-haired boy hand it over to him, Akira took the object and quickly opened it up. There were cards, many cards that held all kinds of strange symbols and pictures. Taking a card that had a tiny fireball, Akira stared at it for a few seconds. Akira then shrugged before flicking the card away to send it soaring. Picking up a rock and throwing the stone, the card was hit but nothing special really happened. It simply fluttered down with a bit of a crease in the middle of the card but nothing too severe. Okay, Akira said as he picked up the card. Morgana, now I want you to try and hit it with since you were in your Phantom Thief clothing. He tossed the object once again. This time, Morgana raised his golden slingshot and released a pouch. His aim was perfect as he struck the card dead center. The result from the shot landing was an explosion of fire that wasn't as big as a Megiddo bomb, but still powerful. Yusuke stared at the display that was before his eyes. Does this mean that we can use these cards that I have drawn up as well and it is not just restricted to you? He asked, looking at the inside of the briefcase. You must have collected so many while I have drawn and replicated countless amounts, this is amazing. His eyes looked in awe. There's something else that I have to see though, Akira said before passing the new card in his hand to Sona. Do you think you can channel some energy into this card and attempt to shoot it? Staring, Sona gingerly took the card and looked. It didn't seem to be anything more special than a brilliant drawing of a small flame. Pointing it forward, she pumped just a small bit of magic into the card. Seconds later, a fireball soared out of the object and nailed a tree in the process. Watching the tree and card burn, Akira ignored Sona's surprised look as he nodded. Perfect. Now all we need to do is wait for Anne's report. Take a break. Putting her phone away, Anne turned to Asia while Issei was sitting adjacent from the both of them as they were given their food from a small fast food restaurant they found. Asia-san, I know this may be hard for you, but I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? The shorter blonde girl frowned, as if she knew what was coming. But she still nodded her head regardless. My first question is, how are you here right now? The last time we saw you, you were taken away by that freed guy. Anne inquired, her arms folded and her expression serious with Issei nodding. Asia lowered her head. I ran away from the church, she said, gaining a shocked look from Issei. I was going to tell you that I was on my break, but when I saw that the both of you were at the park I decided to be honest. Anne nodded her head, trying to be as gently as possible. It then hit her. Wait. The church. Yes. The church near the city's edge. Anne pinched the bridge of her nose, tilting her head back and inhaling sharply. She should have known. How could she have been so stupid? Asia did say that she got transferred to this town's church, where else was she going to be? She literally had been hidden in plain sight and she still was unable to put it together. That was definitely a slap in the face. Well, the good news was that their search was no longer needed. Okay. I have a third question and it should probably be the last. How many fallen angels are there and is there anyone else? Anne asked, knitting her fingers together. Asia didn't answer immediately. I think there were 4 of them, counting Rainier-sama. Then there is Freed with a handful of other exorcists. Anne stayed silent. That meant that there were still 2 fallen angels that they didn't know of. That wasn't as bad as she thought it would be, but wasn't Rainier that person who attempted to kill Akira? Either way, Anne got the information she wanted. Sorry guys, but I have to get back to school soon. Hopefully I'll see you all later. She quickly grabbed her burger and drink. Wait. Anne stopped as she was slowly getting off of her seat to see Asia fidgeting around a bit in her seat. Since you asked me a few questions, it's only natural that I get to ask a few things myself, right? Anne thought about it for a bit and shrugged. Yeah, that sounds about fair. My first question and only question is, Asia started to frown. Were you going to kill Father Fried? A frown soon grew over Anne's face as well. No, I wasn't, she answered, looking down slightly. It sort of sickens me that guys like Fried actually exist. But no matter how much I would want them to probably go and die, that isn't the answer. At least, that's how I feel. You don't have to think about it so hard, Takamaki-senpai. Issei stated softly, earning a nod from Asia. Plus, you did save me back there, so I'm grateful for that. He gave a small smile. I'm weak after all. I'm so weak that I couldn't do anything. If you hadn't interfered as you did, I would have most likely been killed. I don't think that makes you any less likable, Asia stated, earning the attention of the Kuo student duo. She smiled shyly, her cheeks flushed red. You both are the kindest people that I have ever met, and I am really thankful for meeting you two in my short time here. So, we're all friends? Issei asked with a slightly eager smile. As everyone else nodded their heads with their own warm looks, he decided to switch topics. So Asia, could you tell us your story? You know, what your life was like before you got mixed up with fallen angels and that psycho-exorcist. Asia took in a deep breath and recomposed herself, even if barely. I was abandoned as a baby by my parents at the steps of one of Rome's churches. She started. The church took me in and raised me there. She paused for a moment. Then, one day, an injured puppy wandered into the church's courtyard. I prayed to God with all I had so that the puppy would get better. That was when my power had awakened. Anne and Issei remained silent as Asia continued her story. When my miracle was discovered, I was moved into the main church where people from all over the world came to hear my prayers. She stated with a smile. I was truly happy that I could help so many people. It made me feel like I had something great to offer, that I was useful. She continued. Then, one day, after finishing attending the morning masses, I stumbled across an injured boy. Without hesitation, I quickly healed him, only to find out that he was a devil. Anne frowned at that information, and the sad look that took hold of Asia's face once again. I was branded as a witch for healing a devil and immediately excommunicated. Issei looked away somberly as Anne slammed her fist on the table. Luckily, they didn't attract any attention. Are you kidding me? She nearly shouted, but settled for a loud whisper. That was a complete accident and yet you still were thrown out. What kind of bullshit is that? That's pretty harsh, Issei commented sadly. No kidding. You did so much for them without asking anything in return, and those bastards banished you for a simple, small mistake. Anne scoffed angrily, adding in some words. Don't say that, Asia cried defensively. Anne rolled her eyes. I don't see why you're defending them. She continued. They treated you so badly, and for what reason? For helping someone that you weren't even aware of being a devil. How were you even supposed to know that? Yeah, Issei agreed. Opening her mouth, Anne stopped herself from speaking anymore to think for a few seconds. But, I guess that shows just how kind you really are, Asia. Most of your life you've remained faithful to your religion, and later on was treated badly by the very people that made you believe in it, and yet, in the end, you don't hate them. She looked out the window to see the streets starting to bustle. But, at what cost? Asia tilted her head in confusion. What do you mean? Anne turned back to face her and briefly glanced at Issei out of the corner of her eyes. Asia, you're a lonely girl, aren't you? Both younger teenagers looked shocked at Anne's statement. If it makes you feel any better, I was pretty lonely too, for a very long time. Until I met a dear friend, and everyone else. She brought her full attention to Asia. I don't want you to be lonely like I was back then. So that's why you've just gained an important friend for life. You won't ever have to be alone again, Asia. The same goes for you as well, right Issei? The brunette nodded his head eagerly for a few seconds. But then it hit him. Wait, Issei? He asked. Well, yeah, we're friends now. Anne stated. Plus, saying, Hyodo-san is a bit of a mouthful. Well, Takamaki-senpai is as well. So, just call me by my first name. Should be simple enough. Issei blinked before smiling widely. He then looked at Anne hopefully. Anne-senpai, I know that there is still school to go to, but can I spend more time with Asia? Anne smirked. Were you going to do it anyways even if I said no? She watched him look away. Yeah, thought so. Sorry. Don't be. You should continue making Asia happy. Anne smiled, looking over to the other blonde. Hear that, Asia? You're going to be spending your afternoon together with Issei. You don't have a problem with that, do you? The surprised blonde in question shook her head. And no. Then I leave her in your care. Make sure that you have some fun as well. Waving her hand, Anne ran off back to school while texting. Take a break. Rias sighed as she looked at Issei. Her pawn had just barged into the clubroom about 10 minutes ago with a bloody shirt and a seared wound on his chest. There was no doubt that it was the work of a fallen angel. Although, when Issei told her his story, she noticed a few things that were a bit off. The first thing she noticed about his story is that Asia was involved yet again, even after she had repeatedly told Issei to stay away from her. The second thing she noticed was Anne's involvement in the issue. The blonde in question seemed to know a lot more about devils than she expected. It was almost like she knew everything Akira did. Rias' green eyes moved to the side to see Akino standing at the entrance with a slightly concerned look on her face. Hiba was sitting on the couch, polishing a sword. Kaneko was sitting next to the male, gnawing on a piece of candy yet still kept an ear open. Issei-kun, I told you over and over again to not get involved with that nun. Rias chided in annoyance. But, now it seems that even Anne-san has gotten involved with your shenanigans. She's not even supposed to know about devils. Issei shook his head vigorously. But she knew Asia too. She wants to save her as much as I do. He almost shouted. If you won't do anything to save her, then Anne-senpai will. And I'll help her. No, you will not. Rias countered as she got up from behind her desk. I will not allow you to. You've almost died twice in 1 week's time, and if you die again, I won't be able to bring you back this time. Issei looked away with a sour look on his face. What's the big deal then, huh? He looked back at his king. I'm just one piece on the chessboard. A simple pawn. I'm easily replaced. A slap suddenly rang out and everyone in the room, even Kaneko, turned to see Rias standing in front of the perverted teen. Her arm and hand was raised while Issei's head was turned as if he had been slapped. It was pretty obvious what happened to everyone in the room. Don't talk like that, Issei-kun, Rias said, pulling her hand back while trying not to raise her voice. Do you really think that the pawn is the weakest? She folded her arms and narrowed her eyes at the boy in front of her. The pawn piece has special traits that none of the other pieces have, called promotion. The brunette tilted his head with a questioning look. Promotion. The redhead beauty nodded. When a pawn is deep in enemy territory, they rank up to any other piece, besides the king. She explained. But, it is not something that you can do at will. As I stated, it required you to be in enemy territory, and have the permission of your king to do it. Enemy territory and the permission of a king. That's another detail you forgot to mention. Slightly startled, everyone turned their heads to see Akira walk through the door carrying a suitcase with Morgana perched on his shoulder in cat form. Sona, however, stayed right beside the black-haired male as she traveled the same speed he did. Futaba popped her head out from behind Akira and gave Rias a glare. Anne meanwhile was behind them by only half a second. Walking right over to where Rias and Issei were standing, Akira stopped, and that's when everyone else who accompanied him did as well. Sona, Akira-kun, what are you both doing here, as well as Futaba-san and Anne-san? Rias asked with a bit of a confused look. Grimori-san, Anne breathed, her voice even and firm. We heard the entire conversation. What Issei said is true. She stated, I met Asia the same day as he did. Just like him, I do want to save Asia, with or without your help. There is also the issue about you constantly pushing Futaba to join your peerage. Akira added, taking a step closer to Rias. Stop it. In fact, don't even bother asking Anne or anyone of my friends. Their answer is going to be no. It always will be no. They will always stick with the response of no. As Akira's eyes bored into Rias, Issei took the opportunity to take a couple of steps closer to Anne. Anne-senpai, the brunette started before Anne put a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry about it. Anne waved him off before giving a small smile. It's not like you gave her to them, right? You tried your best to protect her. Besides, you asked me to help you save her, remember? Well, it won't just be us. Akira, Morgana, and even Futaba are going to help get her back. Issei blinked in surprise before smiling back. Yeah, so, you had a fun day with her? Anne asked. The boy nodded. Yes, we had a blast. He answered honestly, a ghost of a smile appearing on his face before disappearing quickly. I should have been careful. I should have taken her somewhere safe, but, she told me that this may be the last time I see her. The ash blonde was confused. And why is that? She told me that when we were hanging out. Issei responded. I don't know what she meant, but I have a feeling she was serious. Anne was confused. Why would Asia say? Anne's eyes widened when it hit her. The Fallen, they were going to do something to Asia that may end her life. That, or something was going to happen that kept her locked up forever. Akira. Anne walked up and pulled the boy's head to her ear. I think they're going to kill her. Akira slowly turned his head. Looking around him, it looked like Futaba and Morgana both heard what the blonde of their group had said. We're heading out, now, he stated firmly as they all took a step towards the door. Akira-kun, that stopped all of the phantom thieves in their tracks as they turned to see Rias giving them a stern look. I cannot allow you all to go after this girl either. She stated, you all will die if you go there. Each of you may have been able to survive a single fallen angel or a stray exorcist. Her eyes narrowed, but there is no way you can take on more than one. Akira stayed silent. His own eyes began to narrow as he took a deep breath. Closing his eyes, he inhaled and exhaled. It was getting very annoying at the moment. What Rias was basically telling them to do was to let Asia die. He was not going to let that slide. If you had at least taken care of the situation from the beginning, none of this would be happening. His tone was even, but his words were cold. Hyodo-san died, remember. I'm not going to let the same happen to an innocent girl when I know what may end up happening to her. But even though that happened, I still revived Issei-kun to keep him alive. Rias tried to reason, which was a pretty bad one in Akira's opinion. Even if it happened to you, you know I would bring you into my peerage. Peerage, peerage, peerage. Akira repeated like a broken record, saying the words, with a distasteful look in his mouth. That's all you care about, isn't it? You don't care if you harass others. You just keep pressuring them. We had to drag Futaba out of her room because she didn't want to deal with another afternoon of your bullshit. Everyone flinched at Akira's swear. It almost looks like Citri-san is the only different devil that I am aware of that isn't too greedy. You're nothing special as she describes. Just as common as fictional devils come. Stepping away, he gestured the others to follow him. Come on, stop right there. Rias exclaimed, stepping after Akira. If you go to the church, you will die. Akira didn't show any signs of stopping. Gritting her teeth, she slapped her hand on his free shoulder. Akira Kurusu, I am talking. And I'm not listening. Spinning around, Akira grabbed Rias' outstretched arm and pinned her against the wall near the door. They were face to face as Akira now had a glare on his features. The entire occult research club but Issei stood at attention, all preparing to protect their king. The brunette of the devils though was shocked. Sona however stood right between them and Akira as she stood firmly in place but kept a glare in Akira's direction. Now you listen to me, Rias Grimori. Akira almost growled out as the voice rumbled in the back of his throat. You are treading on a very thin line that is between my patience and a deep, dark pit of trouble if you continue to try and stop us. You could have taken care of Rainier when you had the chance, but let her go freely. You could have just asked Hyodo-san to join your peerage but you didn't. Futaba asked you to stop asking her the same question over and over and over and over again, time after time, you didn't. He leaned in closer. We don't take orders from you. We are not your servants. We are not your friends. We are strangers. If you do want to move out of the stranger level, I suggest at least to stop asking us to join your peerage as it will make you seem much more competent than usual and prove that you listen to the well-being of others. After that, I am sure that we could become friends extremely fast. A hand grabbed the arm that was pinning Rias. Turning his head, Akira saw that Sona was now right beside the two of them. Akira-san, let her go now. The girl requested, staring at his eyes while he looked at her. I'm sure that she's learned her lesson now. Plus, she has her reasons. She just never bothered saying any of them due to high moments of stress. But the main point is that a war between the three factions could possibly be started if any members of her peerage attempt to storm the church. Her pupils narrowed, and I'm sure that you wouldn't want to be the cause of a war, would you? Akira didn't say anything, slowly looking back to Rias, his attention snapped back to Sona in seconds. Thinking, he eventually stepped back and let Rias go. Well, it's a good thing that none of us are part of her peerage then or are devils to begin with. He commented as he looked to all of the other phantom thieves around him. Are we all ready to go? Anne blinked, realizing that Akira was speaking to them. She had to admit, she was a bit shocked that Akira could react like that. Yeah, I'm ready to save Asia. Futaba was the next to regain her senses, but easily waved the moment away. She hummed while nodding her head. Let's get going, Morgana commented from his shoulder. Before they could move though, Sona's hand was still holding onto Akira's. I have to ask you this question though, she stated, her narrowed eyes still staring. Just how confident are you being able to rescue this Asia girl without any of you dying? None of us will be dying today. I can promise that, Akira answered, nodding in confirmation. Sona seemed to be satisfied with the answer as she released her hold. Go then. It's a shame I won't be able to see you in action. If I go, then I may be accused of commanding such an attack. Thanks, Citri-san. With those words, Akira and the other ran out of the room. Are you crazy, Sona? Rias exclaimed, watching them leave. You're just letting them go into a place that may be swarming with exorcists and fallen angels. Akira-san said that he is confident that none of them will be dying. Therefore, I have complete faith in him that he will rescue Anne-san's friend without any of their lives being lost. Sona simply reasoned, walking out of the room. But before actually going out of the door, she turned her head and eyed Rias. You would have faith in them as well if you knew who they truly are. Well, there we go. I say the last scene could have gone better. But still, I'm happy with what I wrote down, even though there is a reference from something that many people may or may not like. About the crafting of infiltration combat tools and use of skill cards, I don't know. Maybe it may have ended up ruining this series, but I wanted to add it in to try and make this series more unique since this was a mechanic in game that I heavily relied on when I first started in a way to get all those all-out attacks and moves I wanted. Besides, where's Akira going to get some more tanned leather, red phosphorus, and liquid mercury for those Megiddo bombs now? Plus, I'll attempt to balance the skill cards out in a way. So, battle at the church next, and there is going to be something else that is going to just seem like it's inserted in, but I feel like I want it to be like that. No flames please.